So we're going to finish up our body paragraphs today. You'll notice from the agenda that it's the review of narrative leads and transition words. I would leave your computers on because on this PowerPoint I have the transition words that will really kind of help you. And you can pull up this same PowerPoint and look at them as you're writing, but it is up to you. Then you're going to brainstorm your body paragraphs 2 and 3 that is required. So we don't want you to just jump into writing. It makes it very difficult, so you'll have to do your brainstorm. And then you're going to finish the body paragraphs. Those are due at the end of class. Okay. The standards are the same that we've been working on since we've been working on this in pieces, which is being able to write an essay, showing that you're thinking about it. Our absent students will do that. So a review of narrative leads. Just as a quick reminder that you make sure you started with a hook when you did your introduction. So as you glance at your paper, just make sure you've got a hook. Your hook can be either dialogue, which we talked about. It can be a sound effect. It can be an action, so like I threw. It can be a snapshot, which is a really good one to do. Okay, it's just imagery. It can be a question, where you ask the reader kind of a question. And then flashback, and I noticed last week that quite a few of the kids were doing this one, so that's good. Okay. Okay, so transition words in narrative writing. You want to make sure that you have some of these words, because if you don't have transitions. And these are the ones that you specifically want to use for stories. After, as soon as, before, started, next, initially, now, when, immediately, subsequently. Now, first and second are on the list. I am not fond of first and second simply because they're so basic. You would get the points for having it, but in terms of impressing your reader to kind of bump up that score to the next level, that wouldn't happen with first and second because they are basic. So if you kind of can't think of anything else, you could use first and second. Once, in the meantime, is really a good one. Later on, so you could do later on instead of second, in the beginning instead of first. Okay, that would be much stronger. Meanwhile, okay, that's kind of if something's in the middle. Meanwhile is a really good transition for a middle of a paragraph or a second body paragraph. Okay, last is kind of in the same as first and second. It's okay, you'll get points for having it, but it's not a great transition word. When we finished, or in the case of the prompt, when I finished, would be better. The last thing still has last in it, but it's better than last. Later, since, suddenly, after blank minutes, when we were done, right after is a good one. In an instant, however, soon, then. Lastly, same problem with lastly as last. It's actually stronger than last because it changes it into lastly, which is an adverb, but it's still one of those that's, since you have choices, try to choose a stronger one. Okay. But these are in this PowerPoint in Schoology under today if you want to keep them up while you're writing. As you're writing, we'll come around and help, okay, as usual, but you will need to make sure that you get the body paragraphs done today. Are there any questions on your assignment? Does everyone understand how to brainstorm? Yes. Let me see if this helps. Okay, so from what I can see, you guys have your introduction, which is great. You may be struggling for the next part if your introduction is wrong or you didn't complete the brainstorm. So let me kind of help you out. At the bottom of page 85, you will see in the very last paragraph, this part right here. And it says, a garden was my mother's way of holding on as tightly as she could to any scrap of our former middle class life. So when you're looking at your story, okay, remember, we are rewriting this from the mom's perspective. And the story takes place over about a year. If you think about the fact that the daughter says, that next year they weren't talking about the queen and wealth and poverty. It wasn't news anymore. So we can say that approximately a year. During that year, the daughter's problem is her classmates, okay, and their view of what wealth is, and their belief that they're being objective when they're really not. Okay. But during that same year, the mom's problem is what?
And now she's not.
Yes, and that is the mom's problem. Her conflict is that she is trying to hold on, in the words of the story, to her former middle class life. So she was married, got divorced, and when she was married, she had a nice life. And now that she's divorced and living in this, what they call it, I don't think I put it on here.
So basically her husband was the one that had money.
But we know that that's her problem. And so over the course of the year, when you are rewriting this story from the mom's perspective, your essay is going to be how all of these things that happened interfered and caused her conflicts while she's trying to come back to the middle class. So I noticed that a lot of you started with either the garden or her ex-husband. So if that's what you did, so body paragraph 1 for some of you was the ex-husband. And that's good, okay, because that's definitely something that caused her to be struggling with coming back into, I wouldn't say wealthy because she's not concerned with wealth, but a comfortable lifestyle, okay? The ex-husband doesn't pay his child support, and that's part of the problem. So if that's your first body paragraph, which I've seen some of you do, then you look at the text and you go down here and you say, okay, if I chose this paragraph to rewrite as my first body, because that's what I'm talking about, the ex-husband not helping provide, then what is that next paragraph? And it's that my mother is honest. And so what's going on here is the manager of that housing company is saying, you can't have this computer. So the second conflict, looking at this paragraph that you are going to rewrite from the mom's perspective, is how she's trying to juggle work, school, and home life, because that's what this paragraph is about. It doesn't go into a lot of detail because it's the daughter. But when you go to the mom, this is a huge part of her problem, isn't it? How do you juggle work and school and home when the person that you're paying the bills to is saying, you can't have that, you can't have that. The things that make that easier. So that's what you would rewrite for your second body paragraph. And then your third body paragraph, you would look at the next conflict, the next paragraph, and that's the paragraph you would rewrite for your third body paragraph. Does that make sense? No, I'm still confused a little bit there? Okay. All right, let me say that again in a different way. All right, body 1. We know that the problem is being comfortable with money, right? And you have to have 3 body paragraphs that develop that, okay? And from what I've seen, most of you have chosen ex-husband. Let me pause. Okay, recording again. All right, so that is supporting the problem. The problem is, how is she going to get out of the situation that the divorce caused? Well, ex-husband is not paying with money, he's paying with a computer. So that's causing a problem. She has to find a way to overcome that. That is your creative part, okay? Something else is preventing her from becoming successful, and that's that man who says, hey, you can't have this computer. So when you look at that next paragraph, the house manager is saying, you know what, that's income. That scholarship that you're on, the computer, you can't have that, and that's income, so you can't live here. And so she has to overcome that. That is another problem that supports this. And so your next body paragraph would have something to do with that. And then your third problem, you know, it talks about the garden and how it's essential to her mental well-being. She uses it for stress relief so that she can deal with all of these problems. And that guy, that manager, tells her no. And so what is she going to do now? You know, she doesn't have the thing that helps her cope. The children don't have that to help them in the life that she's in. That is one possible way you can organize this. There are different things you can do, because if you didn't start with this, then it would obviously be a different set of paragraphs, right? But that's what you do, is you look at the text and you go, okay, I'm writing about this. This is the paragraph I need to rewrite from the mom's perspective, just like we did with Gordon. Does that make sense? Does that kind of help those of you that were struggling a little bit? Okay.